Hello and welcome to the next episode of Leading People podcast. And I'm Meeta Sahni, and I'm really pleased today to be joined by David McClements. Hello, David.
Hi, Meeta.
Really
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, David. When we were touching base before, we realised we go quite a way back, don't we? Nearly
a long time.
a decade, I imagine.
Almost too long to ponder, really.
Yeah. Well, it's a really good session where I'm hoping to have, and I know we will, because your expertise and your experience is all around leadership. And for everyone watching today, David McClements is the founder and owner of McClements International. And rather than me doing the introduction, David, tell us about your organization and what you do.
Thanks, Meeta. Basically, we go all over the world, training organizations, large and small, on people management, motivation type stuff.
Yeah.
And we also train sales teams on selling and negotiation skills and account management.
Right.
Mostly that's what we do.
Yeah.
And exec coaching as well.
And there is no time like the present to be talking about leadership. We are almost in a leadership crisis, aren't we, with what's going on with our government at the moment, and the trust and confidence that, we have in our, or lack of, that we have in our Prime Minister. But actually, I think that has impacted people in the pandemic as well, because leadership has had to be so strong and consistent, and so many leaders have fallen short because we've just not been put in this situation. What's your take on what's happened over the last couple of years in this space?
So I think when people were plunged into this, nobody knew what to do. So I think sometimes it's easy to look back on rose-tinted glasses, and say, well, why didn't people know how to make this transition? And it's like, why would they have known? Why would anybody think there would ever be a situation where everybody's told to stay at home?
Yeah.
So I think what then happened was folks realized that they had to move to working remotely. But basically the idea then was, we'll just do the same work from somewhere else. And that's all very well and good, but a lot of organizations weren't really set up like that.
No.
To work like that.
Do you think leaders were set up for the way things were shifting?
No, nobody was really ready for this.
Yeah.
So then when everybody was staying at home, and the notion that everything just happens as it would, but people working remotely, that took a long time to realize, well, it can't happen just as it would.
Yeah.
It would have to be different.
Yeah, it's the mindfulness, isn't it? It's the deliberate action towards getting a desired outcome that all off guard. And
at first, everybody was dealing with, leaders and everybody else, everybody was dealing with their own personal circumstances as well, So all of a sudden, kids weren't going to school, both parents might be working.
Yeah.
And you had, well, we can't work all the time because we've got kids. And in my own household, my wife has her own business. She's an immigration lawyer. And we've had to be doing a tag team because we have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And it's literally been, okay, you work now, I'll work now, you work now.
And how do you think that impacted you as leaders in your workspace? How do you think, to be able to, as a leader, we are always, I would say, expected, she says in inverted commas, to have it all, have our heads together, have our thoughts together, know where we're going. But I think that's changed, hasn't it, in the last couple of years?
Absolutely. And in that regard, when we went to working remotely and the expectation that you just do the same but working remotely, organizations, I think, were slow to realize that people working from home with all those added complications, of kids not going to school, etc. And it's not just people who have kids. I'm using this as an example. It can't happen like that, right? So even the physical space, it was difficult for people living on their own. It was difficult for people not living on their own. It was difficult for folks without kids, with kids. It was just hard.
Yeah.
So the first knee-jerk reaction was, we need to find a way to do all this remotely, right? Fair enough. That's understandable. But there wasn't a lot of thought went into it.
No.
And what I've seen over the last few years is that management teams and leadership teams, what they didn't do very well was handle the human aspect of all the change.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is how people were actually going to be able to do this working remotely, and what it meant for them. Like, for example, the children example yet again is, yeah, but now I have kids at home who are 4 or 5 or whatever. I can't sit at my desk all day. It can't work like that.
Yeah.
So it was, and also how people coped with it from a mental health perspective. In that, you know, we are sociable animals. We're built like that. And it wasn't a utopia that all of a sudden everybody was working from home. It was far from it, in fact.
Indeed. And actually, it's probably the first time we've been able to explore something in real time over an extended period of time in business, that actually the whole approach to working has changed. So pre-COVID, many businesses had adopted some flexible working, many had adopted 4-day weeks. And for leadership, actually thinking about people, not just they're clocking in at 9 and leaving at 6, and it's a mass group of people, but everyone turns up with a different story, and everyone needs to be, I believe, the essence of what leadership has become is supporting people holistically. So in their career, in their personal journey with their loved ones, and these days it's not just kids, it's kids, pets, parents, it's hobbies, it's whatever, you know, people want to have the balance, and then personal development. And actually, I think for leadership to flourish and to build that trust and confidence, which is different to what people expected from leadership pre-pandemic.
Yes,
it's that triangle, as I call it, you know. And and you're the person for the job. Your career to training and leading people towards better leadership. So tell me how you got to this space. Tell me how McClements International was formed. I love to hear the why. I love to know what put you here.
So, I started my career in sales in Procter & Gamble. So most well known for Ariel, Bold, Dash, Flash, Very Liquid. But I was in cosmetics and fragrances division.
Right.
So cleanse, tone, moisturize, thickening, lengthening lashes.
Right.
Combination skin, oily patches. I used to know about all that. And P&G is a promote from within only business. So everyone starts at the bottom, works the way up. Nobody's ever hired in above you.
Interesting.
And as a result of that, the organization is really committed to training its people. Massively so. So in my career there, I went on a program and I saw stuff about management and leadership and stuff, and it really inspired me. And I also thought, you know what, I think I'd like to do that for a living. So after leaving P&G, I went somewhere for a couple of years and then started my own business, Whitewater, it was Whitewater when you and I first met.
Very cool.
Started that in '99. And then when the global crash happened in 2008, 2009, I then went back into corporate life again. Right. So I was in BBC Worldwide, who are now called BBC Studios. It's the global commercial arm of the BBC, not paid for by the taxpayer. And I basked in the glorious title of Global Head of People and Organizational Development. Ooh, yeah. And did that for about 3-4 years and really, really enjoyed that. It was amazing. And then back out. And there's a long-standing joke that people could never remember Whitewater or my surname or get it spelt correctly. So often McClements was how people spelled it, so we changed the name to McClements now.
There we go. We're not going to forget that McClements.
No, hopefully not.
But we wouldn't find you on LinkedIn with that spelling, would we?
No. And there's only one McClements company, and apparently it's mine. So there you go.
Good. So we will be able to find you quickly then.
You should be able to.
And so nearly 20 years in the training space, in the
23.
So tell me what that journey has been like in terms of leadership, and what the perception of leadership has been over those 23 years, how it's evolved.
So I think in many ways it hasn't changed as much as some people imagine.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is the the old principles still apply in most situations. You know, what people are looking for from leaders is still fairly consistent. The way we go about it might have changed a fair bit. So I sort of say, can you still read a map? You know, it's like your map might be on your phone, but could you, or you've got sat nav, but can you still read a map? Because most leaders need to still be able to read the map. You know, it's an old principle, but it's still the same thing. So what people are looking for is, where are we going? What's my role in this? How can I be enabled to do it? That hasn't changed.
Yeah.
You know, how we can now finesse it and go about it has changed, and people's expectations of various things have changed. Some for good and some for not, in my view. But the principles stay the same. They're fairly consistent. And when I work with people in all different organizations all over the world, what they've always come back with is, I wish my boss did this, this, and this. And it's like, they've been saying that for as long as I've been doing it.
Okay. And what are the this, and this then?
So one thing that's missing a lot of the time is clarity of direction. Right? What people want to know is, where are we going?
Yeah.
What's the point here, right? And most importantly, why?
Yeah.
And so in what I've seen in organizations is, sometimes the where is there, but the why isn't, and therefore people aren't engaged. Yeah. They just don't get it. But if there's no where and there's no why, it's fairly dire. So where are we going? Next is, what is my role? What are you expecting of me? How do I fit in to this thing, this direction, etc.? And also better delegation, better relationship building, more feedback. You know, people want to know how they're doing. Like, where am I going? How am I doing? How can I do it better?
Yeah, people want to be good at what they do. People want to know when they're doing well. They want to know when things can be improved. You know, they put their lives and their careers, essentially their lives because of their careers, into their boss's hands. And if the leadership can't drive that train and therefore get them to that destination, it comes back to that trust and confidence, doesn't it?
Totally, which is built up using, gladly, leadership isn't a personality, you know. So leadership is leadership's a set of skills. So leadership is nurture, not nature, because they talk about natural born leaders, for example. It's both. Okay. So what I have seen is, there are brilliant people out there. You know, they're amazing, and they're awful bosses, terrible. And one of the reasons why they're terrible is, most of the time what they're after is approval. Okay. Boris Johnson. And what that means is, if you constantly chase approval, in general what it means is that the difficult conversations that you should have, the situations that you should intervene in, the things you should say something about, they don't happen. And people say, oh, they're really nice. They're really nice. But then if you work for them, they go, well, they're nice, but I'm not getting enough feedback, enough clarity, enough whatever, you know? Yeah. And so when, you know, I threw Boris Johnson's name in there, talking about being a people pleaser, or, you know, following the sort of easiest route to sort of making people feel loved and looked after. But actually, as you said, it's the difficult conversations. It's when things aren't flowing. I mean, one of the things I've always felt is important, as you said, about clarity and direction and the why, is the induction. Now, at the main group, we are, you know, we're very much about the full 360 journey. So not just when somebody joins, but actually how that trust and confidence is built from day one in induction. You know, was everything that was promised in the interview evident in the induction, in the person's first 100 days? And is there consistency in that? And I think a lot of leaders can often be all bells and whistles at interview and that first step, and then they almost drop that
sort of intention of engagement and assume that people know now.
Yes. So I coach this thing called mental maps, and it's different to mind mapping. It's understanding someone's mental map. And what we mean by that is their view of the world, how they see it, because managers are not managing reality, and they're not managing the world as they see it. What they're managing is the world as the other person sees it. Right? Which might not match reality or the way you see it.
Yeah. From their own perspective. And yet I would have thought, you talked about leadership not really changing in 23 years, but I feel that, you know, at the start of my career, it was very much do as I say.
Yes.
Whereas now,
although that was the wrong thing to be doing.
Of course, but
3 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess what we're learning is why that was still wrong.
Yeah.
But there was an expectation around it. But great leaders even then weren't necessarily doing that.
No.
If that makes sense, you know.
And now the majority, I hope, or what I see is that there is an intention of leadership to be holistic, to be bringing people along, to be inspirational.
Servant leadership. You know, I'm here for you, not the other way around.
Yeah. So at the bottom of the pyramid, supporting everyone, as opposed to at the top, pushing out orders. And I call it empowering.
Yeah.
So setting the scene, setting the expectation. And then if you do a good enough job in that space, and I know you talk about not just leadership, but you also do management coaching as well, is that same theme flows throughout every layer of an organization. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's an interesting thing that's come up throughout my career in doing this is a lot of what I've seen is some organizations say, we want you to train all of our managers, right? You go, great. And then I go, what about those at the top? And they go, no, they're going to do a leadership program.
Yeah.
Right. And I go, what exactly is the difference? And they are circles that overlap, but they are not completely separate.
Yeah.
Things. And often when you look at what good management looks like, the reason why leaders can do better is they're lacking basic management skills.
Yeah.
And so get sent off on leadership programs, and all their managers are trained something different by us, say. And then at the end of the programs that we run, they go, can I just ask, are our bosses doing this? Because this is exactly what we want from them.
Yes.
And
they're not talking the same language.
Yes. And all I need to do is brand it leadership. And they go, oh, we might do that then. And it's like, but it's the same skills. The same skills need to go all the way down.
Absolutely. And that's so interesting what you say about the perception of management versus leadership. Because actually leadership facilitates good management.
Correct.
And therefore the outcomes that an organization wants to achieve.
And in some ways, you can end up with semantic, debates about, well, leadership is this and management is that and blah, blah, blah. Great management is part of great leadership.
Yeah.
Therefore, leaders should still be learning great management as well as other stuff on leadership.
Well, I tell you what, if there's anything that people listening and watching today should take away, it's that. Whether you're a leader or a manager, it's understanding the symbiotic relationship of both elements of responsibility.
Absolutely. And also, if you're a leader and you've trained all your managers on something, but you haven't been on it, how exactly are you going to encourage those skills, coach those skills, follow up on those skills when you don't know what those skills are? Yeah, completely. So it
seems obvious.
These people.
Yeah, and it seems obvious, and yet, there is still this big divide. So and I think it comes back to this almost them and us feel in an organization, which it creates all the challenges. As you said, if we're on this journey together, this is my role, this is your role, this is his and her role, their role. People understand where they fit.
Yes.
If leaders can't define that, then I took my analogy as like a ship without an anchor. Everyone's up, down, left, right, and everyone's chasing their tail essentially.
Yep. So full of people running around with their hair on fire and working really hard, but not necessarily getting anywhere.
Yeah. And I personally feel, and I want your thoughts on this, that great leadership comes from the leader having examined themselves, their challenges, their weaknesses, their strengths, and being able to admit to the journey they've been on, you know, i.e. bringing their authentic self to the table. People, as you said, we're social animals, we need people working like on Zoom, whereas, you know, together in a room, that's all changed the way people are perceived and received. So how can leaders, and I think I'm a very personable person, but even I find it quite difficult to always put my authentic self out, say on LinkedIn. I may be able to do it with my people in my office and my clients, people I know, but to from day one naturally be authentic. What advice would you give to leaders on that journey, really trying to bring not their work face, but their authentic self to the table?
See, this is where I might be slightly more old school in this. I think there's a level of authenticity. I think when people understand that you deliver on what you say you're going to do, that proves your authenticity, right? Sharing the woes of your own life doesn't necessarily. So what I mean by that is you can be as authentic and out there and open about everything, but if the stuff at work, if you don't do what you say you're going to do and you don't follow through in what you say you're going to do for people, they see that original authenticity as being not authentic.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So the number one thing is show people and tell them what you're going to do for them and follow through on it. That will prove your authenticity.
And do as I do and not as I say, or
this is it. It's if I'm going to commit to doing X, Y, and Z for you and I follow through on it, that is much more valuable than sharing your woes. It's way more valuable.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that people shouldn't know you as a person. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, particularly on LinkedIn at the moment, is this massive virtue of I'm going to tell you how hard my life is.
Yeah.
And it's like that has its place. But when leading people, you can tell them how hard your life is. But if you don't deliver on what you said you were going to deliver, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, it has no context.
It has no, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and if that is being used, if that authenticity is being used to explain why you can't deliver, that might be something different.
Yeah.
Right. But do people do business? I don't know. And maybe it's just me, right? But if somebody puts up a massive woe is me story, it doesn't make me want any more or less to do business with them.
Yeah.
It doesn't. No, it might just be me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an old codger.
Well, you know, and this is why I think the topic of leadership and the power of leadership is it's everything. You know, it's where it starts. And as you said, if we are facilitating and enabling people, and we are at the bottom of the triangle supporting our people, we've got to be 100% clear, as you said, committed, understanding the journey, and then facilitating that throughout an organization. And I think for me, what I'm saying is it's easier said than done. You know, a lot of leaders are only as good as the people around them. So again, it comes back to how do you hire? What you know?
Someone told me a quote years ago.
Okay.
It was as a result of me moaning, right? So this person was challenging my thinking. And they said, at the end of the day, David, you have the team that you deserve.
Very interesting.
And I was like, that's a bit punchy because I didn't choose these people, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, that's not the point. If your team's not good enough, what are you doing about it? Because you will always end up with the team you deserve.
There you go.
And I was like, okay, back off. No, think about it, David. If they're not good enough, to help. And if they're not helpable, what are you doing to move them out of the organization?
Yeah.
You're going to end up with the team you deserve.
Yeah.
And it was powerful. powerful to be told that, because all of a sudden it was, maybe I have a responsibility here somewhere that maybe I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And the truth was, it wasn't.
And if that can be filtered throughout an organization, that message that we all get the team we deserve, we take responsibility.
We take responsibility for it. And it's like, stop blaming anybody else. That's your group of people. And you need to know what they have to do and achieve. And if they can't, you've got to help them.
Yeah.
If they can't, you need to get other people. And there's often a disconnect where people love, they like the job title, they love the people management responsibility, they like the money. And then when it comes to they're not good enough and they're going to have to go, it's like they bail out. They immediately default to HR and go, you just sort that out. And it's like, but they don't work for HR, they work for you.
Yeah.
You need to sort it out.
Yeah. So it starts with accountability and built on trust and confidence.
Totally. And look, I'm not saying people shouldn't be open and honest about where they are in their life if it serves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are some people...
again.
There are some people, as we've all worked with over the years, who will come in and it's literally a daily version of EastEnders, right? I mean, you get to hear every single thing about what's going on outside of work, almost to the detriment of, would you mind actually doing some work now, here? So there are some who are very willing to share. And I've also seen some managers who are not what you might call people.
Mm.
They're not the warmest of folks, but people love working for them.
Yeah.
And the reason they love working for them is because the manager shows, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
This is where you are. How can I help you?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And they don't even know whether they have a dog or not,
Yeah. Well, David, I feel like there's a series. I feel like we've just literally opened the lid to this
yes.
topic. And I unfortunately, I'm going to have to wind up on the promise of trying to keep these podcasts at a time that people can give their But if you're open, I would love to dig into a part, a specific part of leadership in the future to take this journey forward and give people an insight. And I really love your honesty, and I love that we have quite unique approaches to it. And yet, it's also reassuring that, for those out there who aren't necessarily open or don't feel comfortable in sharing, it's not going to stop them from being really inspirational, successful leaders and managers.
And just as a final thought, Meeta, if people have been struggling a bit from a managerial leadership perspective over the last couple of years, they need to be kind to themselves. Nobody knew how to do this.
Yeah.
So be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
And think, okay, well, maybe this is a different ball game that I had to learn how to do it. And things will move on. There'll be hybrid working and all the rest of it. There's just new ways of doing stuff. But be kind for not knowing.
Indeed. Well, David, thank you so very much for your time today and joining me on this episode of the Leading People podcast. And I'm hoping we'll see you again very soon.
I hope to.
Take care.
Thanks, Meeta. Thanks for the invite. Nice to see you.
Pleasure. Bye for now.
Bye.